Okay, welcome. What's your name again?
Brad.
Brad. Thank you, Brad. Brad. Welcome to another episode of Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm here with Matt Connington, and I'm State Representative Connor. Whatever.
But you're close.
I was close. I'll get closer as time goes on. I'm here with also the Honorable Dick Marple. We're going to talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about a subject. I have an invention. I don't know what are you ready for that? In about 2 minutes. I just don't want to know if you were. Anyway, I have a new invention.
Really? I love your inventions.
Well, you know, a lot of
people.
They're
so practical.
I know they're always practical. Because I was talking to a friend of mine, a state representative from Concord, Lynn Blackenbecker. She's in Afghanistan right now. She's in the Air Force, and she's in Afghanistan right now. And I was saying, what's going on and what's the big problem? And she said that the biggest problem is IEDs, improvised explosive devices. And not only are the improvised explosive devices difficult, the clever little buggers over there in Afghanistan have figured out a way to make them without metal parts, so they can't use a metal detector anymore to detect them. So because I'm trying to be a nice guy and trying to do what I can for my country, I came up with a way to fix that. It is a well-known fact that one of the animals they use to find truffles, which are a very expensive, almost like a fungus, are pigs. Because the pigs have such an acute sense of smell. It's better than the dog. So they use pigs to actually go after these truffles. So I've invented what I call, you can show the picture now, a war pig. So they can go ahead of the troops and along the road, and you train them to go up and and sniff for explosive material.
Yeah.
I got him his own uniform. I made that today, so that he'd be sweet.
And if
I should have put a flag on. I forgot to put a flag on him, but
if the pig blows up, you've got instant bacon.
absolutely, it's already cooked. It's cooked.
Smoke it first.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you want to get into that. That's probably not legal.
Yeah.
Plus, you get the added benefit of aggravating the hell out of the Muslims.
Yes, that's true. They don't like.
So it's like a double whammy. You get these pigs going along that nobody wants to touch or get near.
Right.
And if some of them blow up, you get free food.
So they can't because they don't like to even touch pigs, right?
I don't know. I've
there's no
never
risk
been a
of-
Muslim, but that's the.
So they're not going to grab the pig and get it out of there,
No, they're not going to be kidnapping pigs.
right? Because they don't want to touch them.
Right.
Although I heard they make good pets.
Yeah. Well, that's actually why
Pigs,
I thought
I mean,
of it.
not
No,
Muslims,
a
but-
friend of mine his name's Al. He's over in Ware. That's actually why I thought about it, because I didn't realize how smart pigs were. I came up to Al. I went up to Al, and he's walking down the street near my house, and I noticed he had a three-legged pig. And I said, "What the heck you got a pig for?" And he says, "Oh, you wouldn't believe dogs are nothing. These things are so bright." So I walked over his house, and we were going to sit down and have some coffee, and he told the pig to go get him. First we were on the way in, told the pig to go get him his paper, and the pig went and got him his paper, and I said, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
Yeah.
And then we went inside and asked the pig to go get some cream for the coffee, and he did that, and it's like went and got him his slippers. I mean, the pig is wicked sharp.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe how it just responded to command so well. So I asked him, I said, "Well, it's pretty cool, but what happened to his leg?" He says, "Well, a pig this smart, you don't want to eat them all at once."
Yeah. Exactly,
Makes sense.
exactly.
Makes sense, so,
Yeah. That's very practical.
yeah.
You ever read Animal Farm? The pigs are very smart in that book.
Yes, they are. That is such a good book. That is one of the best books you can ever read. If the audience hasn't read Animal Farm
Absolutely. Orson.
Not Orson Welles, that's what I was going
I
to
know.
say.
I always Orwell, yes.
thank you.
I always do that too. George Orwell, yes.
Yeah, you really should. It
Yeah.
it is so accurate as to how, you replace one set of leaders and they become as corrupt as the leaders before, and so on, so it goes.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's
So the War Pig.
War Pigs. That's already got a theme song.
Are you going to use War Pigs by Black Sabbath?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a great song.
It is a great song. It is an awesome song.
Yeah.
Anyway, former Representative, the Honorable Dick Marple. We're here to talk about the Federal Reserve. A lot of people don't really know what it is. We hear references to it. We hear Ron Paul saying that we want to get rid of it, and at least we should take everybody that is a member of the Federal Reserve, take them out and keel haul the SOBs. The keel hauling. I got to go with the keel. You know what keel hauling is?
I don't even know what that is.
Well,
What
that's
is that?
awesome.
I fought 4 years in the Navy. So
And how many
Yeah.
times did that
keel
happen?
is the main structure of the whole ship.
Yeah,
Really? Okay.
for torture, they used to take them and throw them off the bow, and then they'd drag them across the underneath of the boat.
Oh my God. Well,
And the barnacles didn't do well for your skin.
that's what I
so-
call some enhanced interrogation.
Oh, and they had some
Wow.
really good enhanced interrogation
Yes.
techniques back in the day.
Yes,
We wanted waterboarding this for sissies.
that's right.
Whatever.
Oh my.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, I know where you want to start. You can go way back as far as money is concerned, because I mean, you heard the silver little coin they call the widow's mite. The good book.
Wait,
has
wait, wait,
talked
wait,
about
wait,
that.
wait. You got to get a little closer to the mic, and you got to
Yeah.
slow it down so that even I understand you.
Hey,
The widow what?
the widow's mite, that little silver coin that many people call them the money changers. You know what? The first thing that the good book says about the money changers is they threw them out of the temple. And who threw them out of the temple? Hey, that prophet who Jesus to many. That's the first thing he did. So you say money changers. Well, what do money changers actually do? Well, they were selling salvation. We're not selling salvation today. What is being done by the bankers today is stealing your wealth. Mm-hmm. And what is wealth? Wealth is your accumulation of that which represents your time and your labor. So money is nothing more than a representation of time and labor.
Now, wait. As a guy, I've never been in labor, so that means I got nothing?
What do you mean, as far as labor?
Yeah.
Well, no, your labor is the same thing. You can barter it.
I was just kidding.
You
I'm
can
kidding.
barter your labor
Yeah.
for food. You can barter it. In fact, that's the original exchange, money exchange, was really a barter exchange. But then they came through with the Romans there. They had coins. He put his imprint onto the gold coin, which went by weight. All of the coins were by weight. And then when he ran out of gold, he sent his legions out to bring in the gold coins. And he would clip, or he'd have his employees clip off a little bit of gold on each one of the coins, steal some of the weight of the gold. And then some of the ones that he'd clipped back out. And then he'd take the little clippings and he'd melt them up and put some more stamps on. So that's the way the Roman emperors took care of their money shortages, so to speak. But when we got into minting coins, our country began minting coins. That's why you see the little, little on the edge. It's got the little lines around. That's so that you can know that they were not clipped. And interestingly enough,
Wait. So around the quarter, you have the serrations or the knurling.
Yeah, those
I
little-
call it knurling because I was a machinist.
There
but-
you go. That's exactly what it is. It's knurling. You put it on there deliberately to let the eye let you know that it wasn't a clipped coin.
Okay.
But we get into how the American dollar came in. It is patterned after the Spanish dollar, peaches of 8. And what they used to do was they take a 1 ounce coin, and it's cut it in half. Now you get what? $0.50. Cut them to a quarter. Now you get $0.25. But what you were doing is you were cutting them up in segments, like you would cut up a pie. And each one, and so that's the way they minimized it before they started coming out with half
Right,
dollars
right,
and quarter
right.
dollars.
Right,
But that's
right.
the original Spanish dollar was what was patterned. I mean, the American dollar was patterned after that.
So they actually used to take a Spanish dollar and cut it into quarters.
Yep, exactly. Cut it in
Okay.
half for half a dollar.
Right.
Or if it was, cut it into another quarter, or cut it into 1/8.
Right.
So it was all divisional, but it all went by weight.
Mm-hmm.
And the significant thing is weight is what puts a value onto the substance. So if you're working for 1 ounce of silver, and 1 ounce of silver is now, in fact, our Congress has never changed it. It's 325 and a quarter grains of silver. Now, I have one in my pocket. I'll show you what it is. this hasn't changed since they were manufactured.
No,
with
you
the
said
exception-
300 and what?
325 and a
I
quarter
thought an
grams.
ounce was 400 and...
That is pure silver.
I know, grains, yeah, but grains and ounces.
You're talking 410 grams, but you see a silver dollar has the silver in it, but then they add a little alloy to it and make it more durable.
Okay.
So it still has a 1 ounce, but it's got, if you put it on the scale, it's going to weigh a little bit more.
Right,
for that.
okay.
Why? Because it's the alloy to
make
increase the longevity
add,
of
add
wear.
its rigidity.
Right, and give it a little more.
Viagra for coins.
There you go.
Oh my!
Yeah.
But anyway, to bring you up to where I got very much interested in it, of course, I'm a history buff anyway. And as you mentioned before when we were chatting about the first United States Bank. And the first United States Bank, believe it or not, Alexander Hamilton, and he was a paid agent of the Rothschilds. Now, it was Meyer Ensslin Rothschild who made the statement, and this is right about the time of our founding of our country, that I care not the politics of government or how it operates, as long as I can control the money. Now, I paraphrased it, but that's what he was saying. He was saying, forget the government.
Yeah, forget what
Just
party...
give me control of the money.
Yeah, in other words, if you forget what party it is, whether it's Obama or it's Romney, it really is absolutely irrelevant because whoever controls the purse strings controls everything.
Absolutely correct. Could have been said better. Well, Mr.
Absolutely, you were correct. It couldn't have been said better.
Mr. Rothschild. No, you didn't tell him that. Come on, Gary. Mr. Rothschild's actual name was Bauer, B-A-U-E-R, from Germany. And his parents had, I'll give you a quick history on him, a little thumbnail sketch, because it's rather interesting. His parents were involved in what's called, the three balls of a hot shot. That's say
it again.
Like a hot shot. And in addition to that business, he had a shield, a red shield, which was their coat of arms, so to speak, for the Bauer family. And that business became known as Red Shield. In German, it's Rothschild. That's Red Shield.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they adopted the name, changed the name from Bauer to Red Shield, Rothschild, because of the Red Shield. Now, what his parents were doing, they sent him off to be a rabbi.
No, keep in mind that if you go back a little bit further, if you go into the Dark Ages and Middle Ages of Europe, it was unchristian to lend money.
Really?
Yeah, you weren't supposed to do it. In fact, if you what's the document that they did in England, the big one, the
Magna Charta?
Magna Carta. They even refer to this in that.
That's the charter, right?
Yeah, the Magna Carta. Anyway, back in the day, it was considered unchristian to lend money. So if you were a Jewish person and you wanted to make a living, you couldn't do the trade. You weren't allowed to. There was that much anti-Semitism back there.
Yeah.
So the way in the Middle Ages to actually make money was to be a tradesman. You got paid pretty darn good to make a coat of arms or whatever. I mean, a set of armor or whatever. So you couldn't do that. That was off the table. So you could dig ditches, or you could lend people money.
Well, what happened with the Rothschilds is he came back and he saw what his parents were doing. Oh, just about that era is when Robin Hood and his merry men were the first redistributors of wealth. Let's call it the
little commie bastards in the tights.
What can I say? Anyway, Robin Hood was relieving people of their gold, and so Mr. Rothschild, Meyer, had a good idea. He says, why don't we start having the people bring their gold into us, and we will provide a safekeeping for them. We'll put it in a locked box there. And instead of them carrying their gold and Robin Hood stealing on them, we'll give them a receipt, a warehouse receipt for their gold, and weigh it when it comes in, and we'll give them receipts to cover their gold.
Yeah.
And they put a seal and wax like they did on the old documents, and they had the signet ring. That's what the signet ring was for, was to put it into the wax so that people knew that, hey, that's where that came. Now, that receipt, well, no, hey, you bought 20 sheep, you give them a piece of paper here, and you could bring the receipt back to the Rothschild, and they'd give you the gold.
Oh, okay.
So it was all done legitimately until Well, here's what happened recently here in the big one that took a fold here, and we're talking billions. What happened was Mr. Rothschild says, one of his nephews, as the story goes, came to him and says, Uncle Meyer, I got a business deal that I know I can make money, but I need some capital to fund my business deal. And at that time, he says, well, let's see, I got all this gold here that belonged to you and everybody else that had the receipts.
You gotta stay a little bit close to the mic.
They could fold up those pieces of paper, stick in their toe of their boot, and Robin Hood couldn't grab it, or any other robber for that matter. So the paper currency, that's what it actually was, but they were really warehouse receipts for a certain weight of gold. Well,
Almost more like we would imagine a share of stock to be.
yeah, exactly, which you could convert it back into the weight of whatever
Right.
weight it was said on the receipt. Well, what occurred was, there's all this gold here. He said, He said, young man, I'll make a deal with you. I will give you. And what he did is he made out receipts, and he took some of the gold that was here that belonged to Gary, and he put it over here. This is Gary's gold over here, which he makes out a receipt for and gives to his nephew to go out. But his nephew's got to pay him in 1 year back the gold and 10% in gold. Now, this is a deal. This is a contractual deal.
Right.
It's not interest. It's a contract.
Right.
So that's exactly what occurred. Well, then when his nephew comes back in and gives him the gold, gets the receipt, takes Gary's gold, puts it back over here, so if Gary comes in, he'll have his gold. Well, what occurred was the paper was so convenient and worked so good that rarely did they get it. Now, mind you, you've got to stop and consider, at that time, it was walking or horseback. So it took what you called float. Now, float, there's other people coming in, depositing gold and going out. Float is the difference between, and doesn't exist now with electronic, because there is no float. All electronic transfer, no float.
Yeah.
So, but back then there was float. So there was people coming in and others going out, so that there was what was offered was the opportunity for what is now known as the fractional reserve system. And we operate on a fractional reserve system. And to bring it up to date, New Hampshire used to have, well, back it was 1914 when the Federal Reserve started, and I think it was 1915 the New Hampshire legislature set the reserve at 15%, and then it was I think it was 1917 they dropped it to I think 12%. Now, and the legislature hasn't done it, they dropped it to 10%. Who did it? I don't know. One of the bank commissioners took it upon himself. No authority to do it, but did it. So that the state chartered banks could compete with the federal banks, because the federal banks are at 10%.
Dick, when you say reserve, do you mean the amount of money that...
Yeah, well, see, every bank, the fractional reserve means that if the bank had to have $10,000 in physical gold and silver in order to loan out $100,000 in paper.
Okay, so that's what they had to have.
They had to have that.
Okay.
And so if you went into, for example, you go into a bank now for a market, I'll use simple figures here, 100 grand, because mathematics is an exact science, you can't twist it. You go in for a bank that is for 100 grand. You get approved for, you're approved for 100 grand, and we're going to give you a 4% interest. Well, if you want for simple interest, that's what, 4%? That's $4,000 a year on 100,000. Well, that sounds pretty reasonable. So you sign. Now, the first thing you did when you put your signature on that mortgage note, that's a promissory note, which is a negotiable instrument. What you just did is you gave the bank $104,000 that you promised to pay them. It's a contract. Now, where does the bank put that promissory note? Does it go in there, credit or debit? Where does it go? It's got to go into their credit because you just gave it to them.
Right.
And what did they give you? They gave you a little checkbook. It must cost 50 cents or $1 to have printed up.
Right.
And then that's all you got for your 100 grand. You didn't get $100,000
Right.
in either gold or silver. All you got was a piece of paper.
Right. Right.
Now, every time you write a check, You are the one who is creating this fictional currency on paper, but there's no substance to back it up. Now the banks, that's why they're in this mortgage crisis that they're in now. And the Massachusetts Supreme Court, was it just a week or so ago? Martha Coakley down there, she's going after those banks for failing to pay fees, the transfer fees for the deeds. Now, that's something our registers of deeds should look into too, with these banks, and collect the fees that they've been escaping with MERS. But I don't want to get into the mortgage. That's a whole other issue. Back to the Federal Reserve, because that's what you want to talk about. The Federal Reserve, this country operated very significantly.
Well, I'd like to back up just a little
All
bit.
right, go ahead.
So back at the beginning of this country, we had New Hampshire had a currency, Massachusetts had a
Shillings.
currency.
Yeah, we had shilling. In fact, we had a mint right next to the New Hampshire.
Oh, really?
Minted the Pine Tree Shilling. The Pine Tree Shilling was the coin of New Hampshire.
So we had coins in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and everything else. So we're trying to start this current country. And one of the big problems was you had all these different, basically, currencies in all 13 different colonies, and we were trying to standardize things so that if, because like you said, it wasn't computerized. So if you brought a shilling from New Hampshire and tried to use it in Maryland, well, they weren't quite sure how much that was really worth.
No, it was assayed properly, the same assay as they were there. But you see what they tried to do.
So Hamilton was the one who advocated for basically a standardized a federal type reserve, right?
Well, prior to that, that's very interesting you bring it up. But prior to that, we had the Continental. Don't you've heard the expression "ain't worth the Continental"? Well, what happened was the Brits printed up a whole lot of counterfeit Continental notes, and that's the way they were trying to destroy what was going on here.
And that's why we shouldn't trust the English even to this day.
Well, that's another story.
If we don't learn from our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
You're absolutely correct. That's exactly what it's all about. But anyway, no, Hamilton is ready. He was an agent of the Rothschilds. And he was, I got to tell you this, because Aaron Burr and you know what happened? Aaron Burr, and he was put into, hey, we'll go off of 20 paces on, and they turned and fired. And who fired first? Hamilton fired first. And then it went right over Aaron Burr's left shoulder. Aaron took a bead on him, drilled him through him, and he died the next day from shot through the liver. Well, that was the end of Mr. Hamilton. But you know what caused that is rather interesting, because at that time, Manhattan, New York, was the center of all of the business activity. And those ships that were coming in from all over the world, they were trading. And as you said, Guy, they had different coins. And there was a question asked to them. So the merchants in Manhattan said, oh, you go down to the bank and you change that into something that I can accept. Well, Hamilton, being the greedy SOB that he was charging 36% interest on the exchange of these foreign coins so they could do business.
Wow.
Well, what he was doing is he was keeping 18% in New York, and the ships that went back to England, to the Rothschilds, to get the other 18%.
Okay.
So this is going on for, it was 1804 when in fact.
And wait, can I just back up a little bit? Was this George Washington, in one of his writings, he was, as some of the viewers may know, was a Mason, member of the Masonic Order, and it was at that time that in his writings he said that he was very concerned about the Illuminati influencing the Masonic Order, or basically the Masonic Order was pretty much a Judeo-Christian organization, and this was more of a humanistic people that believe in basic humanism, or stem from the Enlightenment period.
Well, the so-called originator or founder of the Order of Illuminati was a gentleman by the name of Adam Weishaupt, who was a very astute student of the Jesuits, and in Ingolstadt, Germany. And he is reputed to be the founder of what is referred to as and revealed in the so-called what is it there?
Illuminati? Masons?
Protocols of Zion. I came out with it. That's so-called in the Protocols of Zion. Well, in that, which and there's a lot of, shall we say, a lot of fiction involved in that. But what Mr. Weisenhop did was, in order to expand his philosophy of Illuminism, which it was, coming out of the Dark Ages into Illuminism, so to speak, he did, in fact, join the Masonic Lodge over there, and he started trying to recruit other brothers in the lodge into, yeah. And when he became recognized for what he was doing, it was the Grand Master, and I think it was in Austria, that excommunicated him, the same as in the Roman Church, they excommunicate those which they're found to be violating the faith. Well, anyway, that's basically the story of how Illuminati started. It has been in the background. It has some interesting concepts which, believe it or not, appeal to a lot of men. Mm-hmm. And the element that we have today is referred to as Illuminati is nothing more than a recognition of, again, historical past, but does it have an effect today? Well, let me put it this way. Since 1913, nothing has had an effect, because the Illuminists, if you want to call them that, they created their mark in time in 1913.
Okay, well, now, so
that's when the Federal Reserve started.
right, I know. Now, so I want to back up a little bit
Okay.
and then get up to that, because we're up to 6:30, and I want to make sure we cover the really important stuff which is going on today.
Okay.
So Hamilton was advocating for currency, and I think they started a bank, and we ended up with a unified currency. Then the banks were the bank itself was being basically run by outside interests other than the government.
Absolutely.
And then I believe the reason we have
Well, that charter expired in 1812. Remember?
right, it expired.
Yeah, in fact.
And they renewed it, and then they were trying to renew it again, and that's when $20 bill.
Hamilton.
No, $20 bill. Andrew Jackson.
Oh, Jackson, yeah. That
Andrew
was in
Jackson
the
was
30s,
fighting
yeah.
the bank.
1830s, yeah. He called them a den of vipers.
Yeah.
In fact, Andrew Jackson was the last president that had a balanced budget.
Oh, really?
I forgot.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was the last president that had a balanced budget.
So as some of the horrible things he did to the Indians, as far as banking, he was the one that was against this Federal Reserve concept.
Yeah.
Then Lincoln. Then we go up to the 1860s with Lincoln, and he needed money. That was the first income tax, I believe, was under Lincoln.
Well, it was repealed.
It was repealed,
Yeah.
but it was just for the war effort, which was, let's call it legitimate. I think an
Sure.
income tax is contrary to fundamental constitutional principles. Then in 1906,
Those are the greenbacks. It was the greenbacks and actually...
greenbacks are people that swim through the trees to get here. Right?
Well,
Close.
no, the greenbacks were what
No, those are
Abraham Lincoln
Martians.
had instead of borrowing money from the Rothschilds. Instead of borrowing money there was a gentleman, a colonel, I think his last name was Dick, D-I-C-K, if I remember right. I maybe I'm wrong. But anyhow, he was an advisor to Lincoln, and he says, look, you have the authority right here in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. It says right there, clear, we can create our money. So what he did was he created the so-called silver certificates, or greenbacks, which represented a silver dollar.
Quantity of
Each
steel.
one. Each one of those represented a silver dollar, which was, and it said to him, payable to the bearer on demand, $1 in silver.
Which, yeah, I try to get that.
Well, not today, because you see what we have is we don't have a constitutional republic. We have
Anyway.
a legislative democracy.
Okay, so we go up, let's back up again. We go to 1907, and there was a few people that believed that they were about to corner the market on copper. And it was a Knickerbocker Bank. That's a good name. Knickerbocker Bank
beer.
in New York had a lot of that stock.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty excited about this until somebody dumped a whole bunch of copper onto the market, which brought down all their shares to zero. or close to it,
Yeah.
and people started to run on the bank, and that was in 1907, and it caused some. That was one of the biggest banks in the country, and it died. And in 1913, which Dick is talking about, they decided that they had the premise is if you have a Federal Reserve is not a federal entity.
It's a private corporation.
It's a private corporation that was set up by Congress. And what it does, and it's not that unpragmatic of a thing if it was used as it was intended.
Yeah.
The idea is you have any bank that wants to deal in the United States, not any bank, if you want to belong, I should say, to the Federal Reserve, you have to keep within that bank a certain percentage of your wealth, okay, in that Federal Reserve. And what that does is provide a certain quantity of money in the Federal Reserve, kind of like a liquid asset that they can, if there's a run on that Knickerbocker Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank steps in and starts paying out the members of that bank so that that bank doesn't go bankrupt and start a collapse of the entire system. So the Federal Reserve was one of its functions was to create a reserve to pay off those banks at any given time if something happened, so that it would add liquidity to what's called liquidity, which means liquid gold. No, it adds adds the ability for banks to come up with a lot of cash very quickly to pay off lenders that are if there's a run on the bank. The other thing that Federal Reserve does now is anytime if you write me a check today, not only will it bounce, before it bounces, because I know you,
Yes.
before it bounces, it will have gone through a process in the Federal Reserve. It will be processed through the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, the Federal Reserve, and it keeps track of money going back and forth all the time. But like Dick says, that's all electronic now. That's the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has X number of branches, local.
It's 12.
12
12.
branches. And
12 districts.
those members, I think there's 9 members in charge of each branch. 3 of them are private citizens, 3 are bankers, and
What the allocation is
3
now is,
three are appointed. And
is let's put it this way, it's questionable because you see, as Mr. Paul says, and I can attest to the fact, the Federal Reserve has never been audited, and this is a problem because, you see, it operates independently from Congress with no oversight whatsoever. So this leaves it open for all these shenanigans that were
well,
going on.
it does too. But now they're to explain that also is if let's say it was completely open. If the Federal Reserve books were open day to day,
Transparency, you're talking about.
complete transparency, which is what people want.
Right.
The pragmatic part of that is if it was completely transparent and there was a run on, let's call it the Knickerbocker Bank, which doesn't exist anymore, but let's say there was a run on the Knickerbocker Bank and the Federal Reserve had to shove $20 billion over to the Knickerbocker Bank to keep it afloat. Then there would be a run on other banks around that because they said, oh, wait, what's going on over there? And the way news travels, especially nowadays, that bank could be done in a week.
Well, that's exactly what the internet did
So-
within the last. Well, the internet was the beginning of, if you want to call it a run on the banks. They were advocating.
But anyway, just let me finish that thought.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's why a really legitimate reason why they don't have complete transparency. Now, why they don't have complete transparency from 2 years back is another question altogether. That really is no good explanation why they can't show us the books to make sure that Paulson isn't lending to his best buddy over in Saudi Arabia to buy more widgets or something.
Well, as I was going to mention there, what you're suggesting is actually a run on a bank. What was being done, not a run on the banks per se, but as a result of the billion-dollar bailouts that the Federal Reserve has done, which is the people's tax rate money. But there's a problem here. I want you to be very specific on this problem. And the problem is we're not dealing with substance. You're dealing with fiction, total fiction. Fiction is a keyboard entry. It can disappear. Your IRA account or your 401k can disappear with a keyboard stroke. And what are you left with? You have no substance. So there's been a tremendous, if you look on some of Fox News and so forth, they get advertising, gold and silver. Put some of your assets into physical weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It
no,
doesn't
wait.
disappear.
Now, that's not necessarily a great idea either. Now, remember back, you're going to know this better than me because you're more smarter than me. But back, I think it was, geez, I don't know what time period, the federal government told everybody that owned gold that they had to pony up and give it back to the federal government.
And Roosevelt did it by executive order. Had no authority. The man should have been executed for treason. I'm serious. I despise the man. But anyway, that's $1.
That was $1.
And look at the date on it. Just look at the date on it.
Oh, yeah, like I
No.
can see stuff.
I use that. In fact,
1879.
and that's a silver dollar.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago. Judge Napolitano,
Napolitano.
and on Fox News, yeah. He's
a sharp
he's
dude.
a little bit right to I'm almost with him. But anyway, he happened to be the guest, featured speaker at the Freedom Forum down at the Nashville. What's that hotel there in Nashville? The Crown Plaza. Crown Plaza Hotel is the Freedom Forum having their annual. In fact, they got one coming up in February. I may go down to that also. But anyhow, I was there because I had an exhibit passing out literature on the Fully Informed Jury Association, and the judge came by. I'm just seated, and I shook hands and get a little chat with him. And as he come by, he said, "Well, he says, all you got to do is follow the money." He's on.
Yeah.
The judge is right on it.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're absolutely correct." And it was a group from New Jersey for the Campaign for Liberty. They stopped by, and I said to get talking with them about money. And I said, if you got 4 minutes, you've heard the expression, "A picture's worth 1,000 words." Well, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, then a drama should be worth 1,000,000 words. I said, I'm going to do a little drama for you. And I took out my props, which is a silver dollar, an ounce of silver, an ounce of gold, and the 4 pieces of paper. And I started off this little bit with, most people, the only thing about money is they don't have enough of it. And they wonder why they don't have enough of it. And that's because the banks are stealing it from you. Mm-hmm. So let me show you how. And I did this little 4-minute drama, and I forget what his name is, but that was it. He says, my video camera is up in a room. He says, will you do this tomorrow? He said, here. I said, yeah. So he said, I want to videotape that and put that on a YouTube. He says, well, I said, I'd be happy to. So the next day, it was Sunday, and it was in the morning. There was still good traffic there. I did it again for him, and he videoed it. It runs for about 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. Did you? I think I sent it to you.
Oh, yeah, I
guys.
posted it on Facebook on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I put that.
Did you?
Did you see that?
I haven't seen that. No.
Yeah, it's on.
It's Marple Money, all lowercase. MarpleMoney.m as in Mary, P as in Paul, and the numeral 4. So if you go to YouTube,
Okay.
and just put in MarpleMoney.mp4.
Okay.
And it should come right up on the top
okay.
there.
Yeah.
And it only runs for 4 minutes, but I call it a primer.
Yeah.
To introduce people into what is money. Money only represents your labor and your time. Mm-hmm. You can't do that with a piece of paper because you can see, I can change the numbers on a piece of paper.
Right.
And that's exactly what the Federal Reserve is doing. And so as they increase the amount of paper that is in circulation, which used to be called M1, they've changed the game now. They no transparent, M1, M2, M3. They don't even talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
And they call it the national debt. That's not the national debt. It's the federal debt. You say, what do you mean, national and federal? Do we have 2 governments? Absolutely. That's the first thing that anybody's got to understand. We have 2 governments. In New Hampshire, we have 2 governments. That's why we have 2 seals. In fact, I was responsible for getting the seal of the Republic onto the publication that Bill got. And Bill, I said, Bill, you can get Secretary of State. You can put it on there. So that was, I think, it's only been on there for about 10 years.
Really?
Maybe, yeah. And you'll see this Constitution, it's got 2 seals. The top seal is the seal of the Republic. That represents the first 39 articles in the Bill of Rights.
Okay.
That's the people. The people own the republic. And
Right.
it's guaranteed under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution for, not of, Constitution for the United States. And that word for is the original. What you have now in a corporate government in Washington, which is a corporation,
Oh yeah.
is Constitution of, O-F.
Okay.
That changed. So it's just changed. What they did was they took the Constitution 4 and used it as the charter for the corporation. I'm serious.
Yeah, yeah.
I call it semantic subterfuge, and more particularly sedition by syntax. But anyhow, that's another one.
I like that.
Well, it really is, because
Yeah.
that's the name of the game. And
Yeah.
who plays the bankers and the other, I call them parasites.
I
because
call them
that's
rich,
what they
rich
are.
and aimless, but
I think you know what I'm driving at. They're wordsmiths. And of course, believe it or not, that's how the New Hampshire Constitution has the Bill of Rights preceding. What does Part 2 say? It says form of government.
right.
So the form of government is the people sitting back, okay, now we got our rights here. We got to have somebody to protect our rights and to do the business of our republic. So what do? They created Part 2, the form of government, which is nothing more than the charter of the corporate government, which was created in 1784. That's our Constitution. So our Constitution has the Republic, Bill of Rights. Part 2 is a corporation, and that's why you have the two seals. The seal with the Raleigh, the ship Raleigh, that's the corporate seal.
Okay.
And that represents the first ship that came out of the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, built by New Hampshire Labor and New Hampshire Lumber. In fact, Mass Road right over here, that's how it got its name, because they were taking the beautiful trees down the road there to the river, floating them down, and sent them overseas for Her Majesty's ships to be built.
Yeah.
But no, history is very.
So anyway,
Anyway, back up to the Federal Reserve
back up to the Federal Reserve.
and the fractional reserve system, which is, of course, the killer.
Yeah, the
And-
fractional reserve system just means that they're only required to have a fraction
Yeah,
of their
in
actual
reserve.
assets.
And they don't have any now,
right.
because
Well, because they end up with a fraction of a fraction.
well, no, the reason they don't have any now is because gold and silver, although here's another good illustration. Our national government, right now, in fact, they just opened up the mint about several months ago, this year, though, in San Francisco. So San Francisco right now is hammering out silver dollars, right, as we speak. And the gold ones are coming down here to New York. But anyway, and they do silver down in New York, over. But anyway, it was Reagan, who I think it was Ronald Reagan, that but just about that time in the 80s, 84. But in 84, there was a gentleman by the name of Peter Grace, very wealthy. Is your name in Grace Commission? Does that ring a bell with you?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
All right. If you put into any search engine Grace Commission, and you click on it, and you will see there's a covering letter that's sent to, and it was in January or February of 84, from Peter Grace to President Ronald Reagan. A covering letter of the Grace Commission's report, which had been in business for a couple of years, doing exactly what they're trying to do now, to reduce the budget and find out, project, if we continue the way up, this is what's going to happen. So Mr. Grace submitted this report, and I would commend everybody, and everybody that's listening here, to go and put that Grace Commission report into Google or whatever search engine you use and read the covering letter. It'll knock your socks off, because Mr. Grace and his commissions had a crystal ball, and they're looking at that, and everything that we're experiencing now was predicted back then.
No kidding.
Including, now here's what you're going to really knock your socks off. It says 1/3 of the people don't pay any taxes at all. That's back then.
Mm-hmm.
The second third, now we're up to 66 and 2/3. The second third, this is the Grace Commission report, they're in the underground economy. They don't pay any taxes either.
Right.
So the last third, what they are collected by internal revenue from the corporate tribute that is supposed to pay for the let's see, for the limited liability that a corporation receives from government, they have to quid pro quo. You give us limited liability, and we'll pay you a tribute. Well, that's the corporate. So income tax is basically corporate. It's not personal to any individual. But what has happened has been, again, the Internal Revenue being those that they are.
Yes.
they con the people with words. It's all wordplay. I call them wordsmithing, the way they're worded. So are you an individual? Are you a person? A person is a corporation in law. Are you an individual? Are you a human being? Or what are you, And so really everybody's got to establish what their status is. And in order to, again, know how to deal with the banksters. And the Federal Reserve has now been exploded into what we see going on in Europe. And Europe, the so-called European Union, using the euro, it's just about ready to go. It's right on. And say that Greece and Italy and Portugal and Spain and Sarkozy's trying to divert attention now out of France because France is about ready to go. The German people are upset with Angela Merkel. Angela, in fact, this is on the internet from my they've outed her as a communist. So now they got problems in Germany too, which was one of they was holding up the so and now got one of the big banks.
The one domino in that sequence
they're all going to go down.
that was holding up the rest of them was Germany.
Exactly.
And they're
exactly.
going to be buckling under the debt of everybody else.
Absolutely, and of course everything's
Okay,
going out of Belgium.
we've only got 10 minutes, so I want to get to the chase. So you got the euro that's about to collapse.
You got it.
The United States is if they're
Timothy's
not,
over there
wait,
now. Gensler's over there now trying to come up with some.
Dick.
Hey, can we pump? And they're doing swaps. They just did a big swap.
Dick, I don't
$.
know CPR. Anyway, so you've got Geithner and his band of merry men are at a point where we are at a point where we're, as far as I can tell, and I don't. This isn't a cut against Obama. Because it doesn't matter who we vote for.
It doesn't make a difference who's sitting
It doesn't
there.
matter who you vote for. Okay? The puppet master's the same, like we were talking. Anyway.
It all comes down to who controls the money.
Absolutely.
So anyway, you have the federal government our federal government is about to if euro goes, we're going to follow reasonably soon after, and if we're not, the people in Congress and the federal government will do their best to make sure that we are bankrupt as soon as they possibly can make it work. Now,
The federal government's been bankrupt since 1933.
So anyway.
Operating in bankruptcy.
So
Congress has been nothing more than operating in bankruptcy.
So we have this bankruptcy. The only one country in the world that's even reasonably solvent is China. What is the end game?
Well, this
In
started
5 minutes or less.
This actually started about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's called BRIC. Again, if anybody's interested, all you got to do is go into Google or whatever search engine and put BRICK, and what that is Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now South Africa is in it. There's a couple of other countries. What they did, they had their own international meetings over a period of time, and they said, "Hey, we're all done paying the Federal Reserve a fee, just like the Chinese did when they brought their gold out of London and shipped it to Hong Kong. They were paying the Rothschilds a service charge to keep their gold there. And then when they got their new vault built there in Hong Kong, they said, hey, ship us the gold. We're all done paying you service charges to keep our gold. We'll take care of our own. Well, our own Fort Knox. That was their Fort Knox that they built. Well, anyway, so you got BRIC, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China. They had these meetings, for industry, doing business. So you're China, I'm Russia, and I buy $10 million worth of goods from you, and you only buy $9 million from me this month. This is month. I have to pay you. Let me see. You pay there'd be $10 million in gold, and they do it in gold, and they settle their account every 30 days. Whatever the balance of trade is, if there's a difference, whichever country, or if it's India. And India just bought, I don't know how many tons of gold, 1,100 tons or something. They paid big bucks for it, too. I'm talking, but what they're doing is they're getting rid of the Federal Reserve notes, which are being diminished in value And as they diminish in value, that's why you see the prices on grocery. You go down to the grocery store and prices are going up.
Yeah.
Taking more of less.
Right, but what's the end game? What is their point? Is this to basically, if you look at history, people will concede all kinds of liberty for security. That's what happened in Germany.
Yeah.
The reason Hitler was able to take over
Scare
and do
tactics.
so well is because there was so much poverty and so much stress and horror around the streets that somebody like Hitler or anybody with any kind of charisma at all can take over
Right.
because people want to eat.
Right.
So it looks to me, but I don't know, you know more about it than I do, that the end game is to deliberately bankrupt us so that we are willing to accept a new world order.
Well, I'm going to take a more, shall we say, positive attitude toward it. I don't think that the American people are going to take it. I think
Right.
that they are starting to get educated, and if they look at my video, marplemoney.mp4, they'll learn a primer about money, because money, what we've got to get rid of the Federal Reserve. There's no question about it. If the euro goes, the euro is nothing more than the evil twin sister of the Federal Reserve. That's what they started over there, to duplicate the theft that was going on here. But the theft that they did over there, it collapsed on them.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of nationality. They have a lot of, all those countries, they believe in that. What do you want? That's the nation sovereignty
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
nations. That's an element. So I don't think American people are going to put up with it, Gary. I think that they're going to come around to the fact that look, our 401ks are disappearing, and the keystroke is gone. And with this, what was this country? This big one that just went down with the billions. He was a former Corsino there. He was with Goldman Sachs. He left that and was the governor of New Jersey. He ripped off New Jersey.
Oh, Corzine.
Yeah, Corzine. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and that was his. How many billion did he rip off the people?
I don't even remember. Yeah, a lot.
And the sucker's walking around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've got to start putting some teeth into.
I say bullets. I mean, I mean,
If it comes to that.
I mean, because you look, and that's actually one of the things that I'm actually really afraid of.
Yeah.
Is that when we had our first revolution, it was a fundamentally Judeo-Christian country with very strong morals, so that when you did have a revolution, it was very, very difficult, but there was a moral underpinning of everything. Whereas you had the French Revolution, and it was just a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Gary, if you-
we're closer to that scenario than we are.
A very illustrious Frenchman by the name of Frederick Bastiat, B-S-T-I-A-T. He was a member of the French government back when socialism was taken over in France back in the 1850s. He only lived to be 49. I don't know, he got something in his eye. But he was a very prolific writer, and it's on the internet. Now you can pick it up. It's called The Law, Thelaw, by Frederick Bastiat. Small pamphlet. You gotta read it. If you look at my
Can you
video,
email me it and I'll put it on Facebook?
well, I'll tell you
Email
what.
the link,
There you
rather.
go. Yeah.
The law. It's or you can take it right off of. In fact, Bob's no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he's got my site on the original 13th Amendment. Barefootsworld.net. Go to it. It's fabulous. It's all in all the history here. I'm on there. As I said, Bob passed away, but we've thrown in ships to keep the site going.
We got 2 minutes.
Barefootsworld.net.
All right.
And scroll down the menu, and the law is there. Everything there.
Okay.
Benjamin Franklin, I think it was. Who is it, the founding father, that said that, it's a republic if you can keep it?
That was
Franklin.
Yeah.
And a republic is absolutely. There's a couple of variables or factors that have to be in place for it to be maintained. One is a educated electorate
Absolutely.
and morality.
Absolutely.
If you are absent any of those two variables, it will fall. Educate yourself. Hey,
Gary?
I got
go
to
ahead.
make sure we read this tonight before we run out of time.
Yeah, Howard McCarthy's Senior Luncheon, which is coming right up Tuesday, December 20th at the Belmont Hall on Belmont Street here in Manchester, right off of Valley Street. Arrival time between 11:30 a.m. and noon. Lunch will be served at noon. There's going to be gifts and some local entertainment. A couple of surprise personalities are going to be there. Tickets are $7. Limited to 100 guests, so get your tickets now. And for information, you can call 603-247-0232.
I'm not one of the surprise big.
Sure, you're not.
No, I'm telling seriously.
You would say that.
I know I would say
I
that,
think it's
wouldn't
a- I think it's a
I wouldn't
swerve.
trust me either, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
As far as Hamilton is concerned, we scratched the surface tonight.
I
But
know.
the history of Hamilton and his duel and the proof of what happened when Hamilton actually shot himself in the foot came out during the bicentennial when they had the Freedom Train that went around with the Hamilton Burr dual pistols on it. There's a story I would love to tell.
All right, well, we'll have you back soon and talk
Absolutely.
about it again, because it's very interesting. History is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Dick Marple here with us again tonight, and hope we have him back again to talk more about this stuff, because it's awesome.